Blog Talk Radio.
Here at ACO Radio, American Communications Online, or any affiliated stations or websites are not responsible for what guest hosts or call-ins may say. All programming is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only.
Hello world, this is TJ Morris, also known as Theresa J. Morris on TJ Morris ET Radio. Welcome aboard all you ground troops spinning around smartly on the planet. Hope you can hear me. I am doing this remote today, and as usual, we're going to talk about UFOs today with Jan Aldrich, one of the oldest ufologists, along with his colleagues and people that in the past we have crossed paths with or have worked with. And I'm going to dial him now and see if I can get Jan Aldrich on the line. We've been doing oral reports, and this is book 2. And
Jan or Susan Aldrich.
Uh-oh.
Can't take your call now.
Okay.
At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, simply hang up or press pound for further options.
You said he was going to switch to the other phone. Hi, Jan. This number is 347-945-7207. I had just called you on this phone number, so I'll try to call you. Let's see. Do I have another phone number? Let me look. I'll try to call you back. Okay. Bye. Well, I just talked to him. Not Jan Harzan, Jan Aldrich, but let's see. That's the number I called. Let me try one more time, folks. And I know he said he was going to say 8. That was him, right? This is embarrassing, especially being on live radio, which goes out to all my friends and various great places, Spotify, Stitcher, Spreaker, the S's, and iHeartRadio. But we like to come here every week. And sorry, last week I had to go to the doctor and I missed. I thought Tommy Oxblood was going to cover it, but I'm not sure what happened in Hawaii and Jenna care lesson. Let's try one more time.
Hello?
Hi, is this the wrong phone number, Jan?
No. It's the right phone number, and I tried to talk to you, but I guess you couldn't hear me.
No, it went to the.
When you called me the first time, I was on the phone.
Right. So the second time, it went to voicemail. But we're
together
now.
No, I was already on the phone. It just, I can't tell you what happened.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. You didn't want. I had to click off to call you back. Oh, okay. Well,
probably that's what I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay, but you can hear me fine because
I got you now.
Equipment. Okay, I'm doing you remote today, so I didn't know if you. Is there a lot of confusion? But I apologize. It's January 21st, Tuesday, and this is our regular scheduled time. And I know we've been working together since at least last year, but. Maybe it was 2018. I don't know that we ever established that, but anyway,
no,
2020.
I think it was in the summertime.
Summertime. All right.
Yeah.
Well, where would you like to get started? Because I'm sort of lost today, and we can do UFO Association, but today I've set up UFOs as usual. Jan Aldrich and Theresa J. Morris, Reporters. So I'd like to do this a little differently today. I know that we told people we'd be doing some Indian radio shows with Tommy Hawksblood and the history of Geronimo and things here in Pensacola and over there, but we can touch on that. We have in the past. But today I've got that we are doing our best to form this UFO association. We both have prior government experience and learned to investigate, report, and archive. And I've had some people referring me from the university here in Florida to some interns that want to learn how to do live radio and oral reports. But I told them they could join us in either, well, they're not professionals yet. So we have to set up a hobby association, Jan. And I thought today would be a good time for them to listen. It's a nonprofit radio station in Florida that's listening and at a university, a school, to learn how we build various associations and hobbies in the radio industry. They're more interested in the radio aspects of getting started as interns. So I didn't prepare you for this, but this is going to be more of a class on how we can bring people together and do oral reports. You just happen to have a topic of UFOs. I don't think they care about, but I was telling them they need to get together and form some topics because they're in their early 20s, right? And they don't have a lot of like over 50 write a book report or write a book or even an article yet. So we're going to be working with people that are, hobby in our hobby association because we're not being paid to do this. So how can we educate our people coming up that don't know much about UFOs or how to start an association? Or let's go back and share the history of how we all got into this business of clipping and investigating and reporting and archiving, because they're not going to know about all these alphabets we use like MUFON or excuse me, they're not going to know about CUFOs or CUFO. And we've got websites. I've got several and you've got several. But let's just get started. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell people about your background, Jan?
Well, I'm Jan Aldrich. I was in the Army for 25 years. About 16 of that was meteorology. Then I did intelligence and security, and then I did a little personnel work as an assistant adjutant, which for enlisted person that I am, or an NCO, is unusual for that rank to hold such a position. It's usually an officer, and he's authorized to sign for the commander. And I was in a unit that was commanded by a full colonel, so that's rather unusual right there. And a lot of the things I did in the Army are kind of unusual. So then I did safety, and I was on a two-star general's staff as the safety man. Now, I'm not trained in safety, but we didn't have a professional safety manager who is supplied by the Army, a civilian. We weren't going to get one for about a year, so I held that position. Another unusual thing. And when you get into those positions, you just have to do a lot of research and find out what the job entails. So that's after the Army, I worked for the post office for about 25 years, and now I'm retired. From junior high school, which was somewhere around 56 or so, till the present day, I've been interested in UFOs or aerial phenomena. Started off with seeing a ball lightning, or Kugelblitz, as the Germans call it, when I was in junior high school. And because of that, I got researching about ball lightning and found out that at the time most scientists didn't think it existed. Now they do. So by researching that, I got somewhat interested in UFOs. There's somewhat of a parallel, since both phenomena are somewhat short duration, have very few reliable photographs. There seems to be a parallel there, and that's kind of how I got interested in UFOs. So I've been interested in UFOs for almost over 50 years. Let's put it that way. Now, when I retired, I started Project 1947, which was a volunteer effort to go back into the history of UFOs and find out from various records or interviewing people about UFOs, especially from the early UFO era that started in 1947. UFOs didn't start in 1947, but a lot of publicity about it did. I mean, it goes back to the Second World War and even back to the turn of the century and even before that. So working on the history, Project 47, which is what we formed, I got a small grant so I could travel around the country and go to various libraries, historical societies, universities, other types of archives, and research the documents, including government documents at the National Archives, the Air Force Research Agency at Maxwell Air Force, the Army History Institute in Pennsylvania, at the Carlisle Barracks, and other places, other UFO organizations and individuals who've been investigating this subject. I tried to keep a serious approach to the subject, and I've tried not to speculate too much. This is not my forte. Is trying to say, what do you believe they are? I don't care. UFOs may not even exist, but the people that studied them, wrote about them, and investigated them do exist. So as far as history, we could talk about, Donald E. Keough was head of NICAP, a UFO organization with over 10,000 people at one time, or the Air Force. I mean, the Air Force definitely exists. So that's my goal is to get some kind of a idea of how the government and other people interacted with the phenomena. We have a short time ago we published a scholarly text, UFOs in Government, and it's in a number of universities now. It was recommended for university libraries by the association that actually recommends books that should be in university collections. The organization is called Choice, and the section on social and behavior scientists, histories and geographic and area studies recommended this item for university libraries. So it's in a number of Yale, Harvard, overseas in universities in Europe, and a number of places in the United States. It's a rather long tome, and we actually cite a lot of government documents in there. Other than that, I'm also interested in the actual phenomena, so we unfortunately, these things don't come to a laboratory or hang out where you can take pictures of them. It's usually by chance. So we have the main way we get information is by interviewing witnesses. So I've interviewed hundreds of witnesses on this. We've also done what's called oral history. People that have been involved in the phenomena one way or another as witnesses, as investigators, as government policymakers. We've interviewed, well, I haven't, but I've helped in interviews of almost 50 people. The main person that does the interviews is Tom Tulene, and he has done over 200 interviews. We have, there's also, of course, the universities are now doing a lot of oral history interviews, and surprisingly enough, every once in a while these things appear in a university oral history, where the people recount their lives and any interesting incidents they have, and sometimes their interesting incidents are UFOs. Several general officers have interviewed for Texas Tech in West Texas there, and there's a fairly big library archives which has a pretty impressive collection of UFOs. So does Rice University in Texas. The University of New Mexico is setting up their own archives on UFOs. So it is receiving some serious attention now from academics. One of the things I'm doing right now is trying to scan multiple files of people that have either passed away or turned their files over to me, and we're trying to reproduce these digitally, which is a real pain in the neck because nothing is uniform. Some people use data sheets that are different sizes or little pieces of paper and things like that. And then, of course, what we have is one of the main sources is newspapers, and doing researches in newspapers back to in 1947 when there were 11,000 newspapers in North America. We've screened a number of newspapers, which I had to do by going to individual states and going to the Historical Society, but now you can do it online for those that are online. But there's still many that aren't online, so you have to go and visit places and dig these things out. I'm planning to go to Yale later on this year, and they have a large collection of South African newspapers, which I have to scan by looking at each day's newspaper and reading through there. Also, after you get things more or less, you get your interviews or newspaper clippings or journal articles. Try to put some of these in some kind of order and look for repeating patterns. Right now, one of the things I'm looking for right in front of me is electromagnetic interference from these things, and in the one of the UFO publications that's fairly good, called the UFO Evidence, edited by Richard Hall back in '64. He had slightly over 100 accounts of these electromagnetic interferences with radios and actually stopping vehicles, some doing something to make the vehicles stop, which we still are sort of puzzled by. And he had 100 of these things. Well, I've just updated his catalog, and just for the time frame of his catalog, which stopped in '63, I've already got 200. So managed to double that. And it's mostly from, like I say, interviews, newspaper clippings, reports from the Air Force Project, Blue Book, and other sources. So that's kind of an overview of what I've been doing since I've retired from the military.
Okay, I was on mute. Well, we've got people that do know that they're professionals and get paid to investigate, and then we have paid journalists, investigative reporters, and journalists such as Linda Moulton Howe, and we've got various groups that have annual events, and Jan would like to have somehow annually our own professional and hobby association in the UFO businesses meet annually, but I can't really decide on one event because it seems to be each annual event has like International UFO Congress, or Bob Brown's been in the business over 25 years promoting this, and his partner was Wendell Stevens. Are you familiar with Wendell Stevens? Can you tell us?
Yes, I am.
Can you tell us about him and anything about all these events where people gather, and how you watched them grow since you got out of the Army or started working? Maybe we should start at CUFOs or give people a little history of groups and how ours is starting in 2020. But we're going to try to combine all the good that you've learned on how to do it in 2020. So these kids in the university that are listening to us or want to join our hobby association, they may have time to go and collect stuff, and that's we're under education. But let's start with associations and how they started doing their events, because I'd like to meet you and have one annually somewhere, but it's been suggested we meet where we can both meet where there's an international airport. But we've got, Hawaii wants to meet with us, and then here we are in Pensacola, Florida area, where all the Blue Angels and all the Navy people. And then we've got the body, mind, health people that would like to meet with us because they're trying to pull in, integrative medicine and how it affects the psyche, whether you, like you said, whether you believe they exist or not, it's still part of our psyche. So this is a large, daunting task, Jan, but you've been doing it for so many years. You can see that there definitely need categories and topics and separate aisles at an event. So you want to help us get started? I know you can do a better annual event for both professional and hobbyists.
Well, there are plenty of so-called conferences. Usually they have some. Usually these people are doing this though to put bread on their table. Everything that I have done, when I get any money, I put it right back into research and stuff. So this is not a paid position that I'm in. I've had grants from individuals and foundations to go ahead and go ahead and cover the work that I do, but I do not. I don't do this for money. Now, we have a lot of professional people here, or I want to say we have a lot of suspect people here who do this for money, and they attend conferences all over the country all year, and it's a source of income to them. I do this because the curiosity I have about the history and also the phenomenon. So my thing is a little different from some of these conferences they have, where they're trying to. Most of those people are trying to make a living out of this, which is problematic because a lot of people exploit this subject. It's one that appears to be a target of various jokesters, hoaxsters, and people that think that this is a money-generating type of activity. So I would be at odds with those kind of people. Continue to just try to find new things that are in the record, or run down people that have been in the subject and actually ask them about their experiences. MUFON has a conference every year, and it rotates around the country. We did have a UFO history workshop in Chicago, and like you say, being near an international airport, we got the head of the French UFO project, Jean-Jacques Valesco. He came in and talked to us. He investigates UFOs for the French Space Agency, or he did at the time. We got some people from Italy that came in because they were going somewhere else in the United States, and Chicago's a good place to stop off. So that's what they did. They came to our conference. So being close to an international airport is helpful.
Well, would you say that our UFO Association, can we help? We've got a new group I've started on Facebook called Space Travel Advocates, because I live in the South and my husband worked at NASA, and my children grew up with their grandfather working for Grumman and their other grandfather, TVA Authority, and then their father working at NASA. And then my next husband, Thomas R. Morris, working for the U.S. Army like you did, out of country. And I worked for the Navy and out of country. And we did intelligence work. But bringing it together. We were never allowed to mention UFOs, although we worked in the field, but it's interesting. It's, I think you and I, we mentioned Men in Black, but, in intelligence said wear black because you expected it. And then we have the movie. So it's crossed over. And it's gotten to be a rather huge industry around the world, like you said, with all these events and people. We have authors, which I've got an authors book club and TJ Morris Publishing, but I'm not in it for the money, nor have I ever made, I think I've made 3,000-4,000 maybe in 10 years, like passive income. And this passive income and helping people that are world leaders, and especially American competitive forum. They have the competitive forum with the bankers and the people that lead unions or associations. But this one that I'm doing is going to be, you and I talked about remembering who's who as part of it. We can have an honorarium for people, including Stan T. Friedman. He got an award, and I put his little email in one of my books to help at least have a memory of, it's not written properly, but I'm starting American Communications Online Guidebook. But for you and me running this UFO Association, I started the name back with Stanton Friedman, and George Filer said, don't leave him out. But I'm sure we want to start. And remember, I agreed to help J. Allen Hynek. So a lot of people might not know that we have a history, even though we're starting officially in 2020. You and I probably started last year, but we've just been doing radio shows like book 1, and this is part of book 2, to get oral reports so we can start letting people. We don't want this information to go away, folks, and it takes so much time to write and remember all the people. So we're doing this off the cuff, but we do want a professional association for people business to business, and we want a hobby association so we can train and intern people that will come and help people like Jan here that needs scanners and clippers and people in your area around the world to go and get reports. So it's a huge task, but I'm doing my best. At least let's get organized with Jan and use him and also Barry Greenwood and his friends to help us get this hobby association. It may change to UAP Association, we don't know, but under UFO Association was what I agreed to. But I told J. Allen Hynek I'd keep up the business, but I couldn't at the time because I was still wearing a uniform. But now that I'm retired and I've got time and my husband's passed and my daughter's passed, to work with Jan and to do this because I already did radio anyway. So how do we bring all our future content and get it archived in our cyberspace? And right now, Jan and I both pay for our own websites, and we've got our own people, but we're trying to pull this together. Now, Jan, you go to an annual meeting anyway in Chicago, but that closed meeting, we can invite our new hobbyists or trainees or interns from the universities, but we can get them to have hobby associations. Right now, I'm starting a radio club here in Florida in the Panhandle to help train some people in radio, but they don't have anything to talk about. But some of them said they were interested in UFOs, but they don't know how to do any of this. So we're just going to do ACO club for right now, and then when people are interested in a topic, we'll put them in that hobby association, which may be UFO association, right? Now, you can help us separate. I don't know if you want to say UFO association is a hobby association, but since we're not paid, we're volunteers. So how do we deal with that? It's still a hobby to you, isn't it? Did I lose you?
Oh, no, I'm here. So,
okay, but you're a hobbyist, but we need to get it. We can do the who's who. I don't mind putting people in a directory, but we have to decide what association to put them in. And I guess they'll tell us if they're a professional or a hobbyist, right? Let's
well,
say
I'm
Richard.
I'm a historian. I graduated with a history degree, so that's one of the reasons I do UFO history, because it's I have some experience in and some education involved in history, so that's one thing. And
Well, where would we put you? Would we put you in a professional based on our?
Well, there are, how can you say who is a professional? Usually a professional is somebody that's salaried.
Well, we need to.
I'm saying that.
Yeah, let me look and see what the difference. Professional. I'm going to look it up. Professional associations versus. This is just. I don't know. I just don't want the responsibility in hobby associations. So maybe you can help me decide professional and hobby associations. ACO Professional Association says professional and hobby associations. Okay, so what is the difference? That's something, if people do it as passive, there's an in-between too. Let me see what passive income is. Earn passive income. I think that's what a lot of these people do at these UFO congresses. They're not really making a living at it, but because they make $1, are they considered professionals? So this is at the education level. Passive income that requires little to no effort to earn and maintain. It is called progressive passive income when the earner expends little effort to grow the income. Example of passive income includes rental income and any business activity in which the earner does not materially participate. How do you materially? Wow, now we're getting into ontology and epistemology and the study of words. Wow. Okay. Well, how will we know, Jan? Can you write up? Do y'all have anything written up already for CUFOs and MUFON? But we need one for our professional, our hobby, or both. An association, UFO association. We're not professional. We're not a hobby. Or what are we? What are you and I?
I don't know. I consider myself a professional because I'll put my knowledge up against anybody's. Now, I just talked to this Canadian professor in Canada is writing a book about UFOs, and we had exchange about he wanted certain information, and he's talking about this Julian Hennessy in Europe, and he says, well, do you know Julian Hennessy? I said, yes, quite well. And he says, well, he's a UFO buff, right? He's a UFO hobbyist. And I said, no, he probably knows more than, even if you've been working on your book for a couple of years, I think he knows more than you do.
Whoa.
And then he, what he was researching was there was a document written in 1948 that said the UFOs were probably interplanetary vehicles by the Air Force. It was an internal document. It never became an official document, but it was in there. So he says, well, this is just a legend, right? There's no information that proves that. And I said, yes, there is. Now, it's secondary and tertiary sources, because not only was a report written up, but the UFO project at the time also had to send in reports, and their conclusion was mentioned in one of these reports. And he says, well, do you have that report? And I said, no, but I know what the title and date was. So he says, well, that's how, so how do you know what it said in the report? And I said, because I have a Navy engineer who analyzed the Air Force's report, and he quoted from it. So that's how we know what was in the report. Now, it's not the actual document, but it's got quotes from the actual document. And I gave him all the references, and he said, well, he said, if you read a UFO book, they always refer to some kind of evidence, but they never give you citations that somebody can go and look up. And I said, well, this is the way I work at this thing. So he says, well, that's the kind of thing I want. I want somewhere where I can go and explain where I've got this information from. So that was.
They want to cite their sources as.
Right, and a lot of people don't cite their sources, or they don't even understand the sources. They say this is a Bolander memo. It's not a memo. It's a staff study. Twining memo. It's not Twining's memo. He signed it. He signed it because it was the opinion. It's the corporate opinion of the Air Materiel Command at the time in 1947. It's not his memo. He is signing for the command, and that's at this late date. It's hard to believe that people don't understand even basic military correspondence and administrative
how
procedures.
It relates.
Yeah.
Right. I worked with classifying documents as well as the JAG office, but I've been trained to do what you and I are doing today, and I never understood all the training and why they put millions in me to do what I'm doing today now that I'm retired. But I now recognize that our country and the international arena in cyberspace is now asking the 60 to 80-year-olds to participate in humanity, which we have really never really optimized as a model in enterprise or in global scale before, because you and I were raised in a day where a gold watch, parachute, and all that at 60. But now I was just listening to this group today on C-SPAN or somewhere with all these presidents of different associations together for the competitive forum, including the University of Arizona, different people, the Bank of America president, all these people on a forum to help us. And they're saying that people of mine and your age, 60 to 80 and they're even going to do 90, they want to work, they want to do things, and that we have to redo even the universities. They're going to totally reinvent how we're doing the entire global population, including university level, education level. So, there's going to be the 20-year span for the 20-year-olds to 40 to 60, where they cut us off pretty much and told us, even our MPs, I was talking to one, he was 63, he had to get out. He didn't even want to get out of the military, but because he was 63, they were kicking him out, literally, out of the Army. So there's 60 to 80 now that some of them are still fit, and they were talking about. And I've got, a doctor that teaches yoga and anthropology, and he has a master in psychology in Hawaii that's in my age Folklife Society. They study history, but from a anthropology type of window. You and I are pulling all these. You and I are historians, but we've been in libraries. We've spent a lot of our time reading books. We've spent a lot of time in our government. We understand working classified material, and also now the kids of today are calling me and wanting to be in our group, but they don't have any training. So we're going to have to figure out an internship But this is a whole new thing for right in the time that we want to have all this stuff for the elders to do and help. They're also saying, you and I both know this, that they're going from UFO to USO to UAP to ASCO, and alien contact, and alienologists versus ufologists. And you know the historians like Richard Dolan versus Michael Sala from Australia. You know what I'm saying. We've got all this internal stuff and strife, and even the events. I just had a friend of mine on radio, go on record, meaning YouTube, that he was bragging on social media that he was going to be a speaker at a UFO event, and he cited it. I'm not going to mention any names because, but it's true fact. And later on, folks, if you want to know who I was talking about, just email me, tjmarsagency@gmail.com, and I'll tell you. But he's been told after all this planning and promoting that he is now going to not be a speaker at a UFO event, one of the huge, large ones with a history, Jan, and it shocked me. But what happened is it was just like the Corey Goode, Richard Dolan deal with MUFON and Jan Harzan. Remember the 50th anniversary at MUFON? This is inside loop talk, really. But the point is there are people making choices at these conferences at who is professional or who is nuts and bolts and mechanical type and where they want the history to go versus those that may be working with movies, Hollywood, television, fiction. It's almost getting like nonfiction versus fiction, and the historians want it historically accurate, which would be you and me as well. But they do cross over. So this is, what would you call this? A new movement, a new paradigm? It's everything. But I don't know how to explain all this to the kids coming in. So it's up to us to sort of organize the library, so to speak. It's not just paranormal either. I moved you and me today from paranormal, where I usually keep our UFO association, to education today. So our category today is education, Jan. But you see what I'm saying? So
right.
We're public. Our category is education, and our tags are ACO Association, UFO Association, American Communications Online, ACIR Radio, Jan Aldrich, and Theresa J. Morris. Now, what can we do with this? Because I do not want to lose accountability for the fact that you and I have already done radio shows where you collect and archive, you help CUFOs. J. Allen Hynek, we're doing that history. We've talked about it on the UFO and crossing over into the History Channel. But also, we've got kids that need to know how to get into the business and out of the radio business is the one I'm talking to today, but they needed content. So you were elected because I was called today for the university and for the two people to listen to us today, to train in radio. But I'm not using my radio voice so much. But the thing is, you've got to have the content right. And now they want to join and be interned into association into radio. And why not use this topic? Except that it's in our business, we know it's gotten controversial due to the events. And my point is, now they're deciding after somebody goes out in social media and on their websites and on their YouTube channels and talk about going to be a big speaker at one of these huge UFO events out in the West. And now he's not going to go because it's the owner's right to decide, okay, well, we've decided not to have you as a speaker. But this is what you and I can address with our new founded interest in bringing all this together, but recognizing the old guys, who's who, in our web directory, who's who directory. So there's a need for what you and I are doing right now, Jan. I just want you to know that. But we can't decide who will and won't be speakers, but there's a flavor of who's professional and who's doing it just for a hobby. So go back to that phone call today. You were talking with that man. Would he be interested in being in our UFO association as a
No,
professional?
he's a skeptic. He thinks that the whole business is hooey.
Great.
It's most academics do not believe that there's anything to this.
Great. So, do they even know there's a history to it?
Yeah, well, this guy does. He's writing on a history. I know another fellow from the University of Pennsylvania who writes on this, and he has a grant from the Smithsonian to do a history book on UFOs. But I know that he's going to approach it from the idea that there is nothing to it.
Great. So this is affecting history.
This is the way that you talk about professionals. The professionals do not figure that there is anything to this.
So they're already going in biased. You can't. How do you get a grant and be biased? Aren't they supposed to be unbiased?
Well, I told him. I said I had a long talk with him, and I said, look, the Smithsonian is anti-UFO. So how are you going to do this? And he says, well, I don't care because my credentials are established. But he said my approach is not that this is an important topic to today's culture. That it's just
it is. It's part of who we are.
Well, you can say that, but the consensus is that it is not.
Well, what about our space travel advocates? We're just starting that. I've gotten a call to do space travel advocates because these kids don't understand why from NASA, my own kids, I can't even explain why we dropped the ball in 1973. They're like, what happened? Dad died, and there's pictures in NASA here in Florida on the wall. But, Mom, why aren't we going in space and Mars and all that? So do we join the Mars Society and all those people want us to go to Mars? Or the space travel advocacy is about us getting in space, and it's going to be a social media group. But still, there's a lot of people that believe in Star Trek and movies and going to Mars. And there's been plenty of people that worked with Lockheed. And, I don't know the guy's name. You may know it, but he started a Mars Society or something. And then Ken Johnston was chosen, or one of the older guys that was in that Mars One astronaut program or whatever, where they were picking people, and he was in their finals to go to Mars. And, these groups that go out in the mountains and play Walk on Mars out west, So what do they do with all those people? They have different societies. They're not all crazy. They're just wanting to work with getting us to, they don't have to work for NASA or Grumman or Lockheed, but a lot of these space agencies, they're competing now, I guess, with Elon Musk and who's the Virgin Airlines, Sir Richard Branson, different people like that, if that makes any sense.
Exploring space and UFOs are two different things. And so that's...
Why? It doesn't have to be. We've got the Space Force coming up.
First of all, you got to get people that are... NASA doesn't want to go near UFOs. So, that's one thing right there. So, they're not interested. They think it's a waste of time.
Well, they're interested in getting money to go into space. They're interested,
but they're not interested in UFOs, which is a different topic altogether.
So now the UFC, so our ACO club or whatever I've got going on, American Communications Online, trying to deal with all the red tape, seems like I've always had to do this. I've always had to separate everything, but it gets to be so costly because it's like religion. I can't get everybody in the same church or on the same Theosophical Society. I can't get historians on the same. It's just hard to get people together.
Well, like I said, UFOs is not a reputable topic for discussion. Now, I say it is. And my argument is that it doesn't matter if UFOs exist or not. That there's a long history of people writing, studying, being involved in government programs, and you can study that.
Well, how do we separate science and history? Like you said, NASA, but look at the History Channel. But people are talking
look at the History Channel. Look at the History Channel. What a piece of junk. What a terrible organization. They used to actually make good documentaries. Every one of those documentaries, or every one of the Project Blue Book things that they've done about Hynek has been a stupid, absolutely stupid. Has nothing to do with history.
It's more entertainment. It's like
it's entertainment.
Hollywood.
It's just entertainment. Now, Hynek didn't do anything like that. Now his son, who was not interested in UFOs when Hynek was alive, is giving his okay to everything.
So they're using his son as the expert.
Yeah, sort of. And I've always said that Hynek had an interesting life, and if you actually told the truth instead of a couple of jerk writers coming up with some kind of a
script.
Yeah.
It's not a documentary.
A rather bad science fiction. If you actually look at some of the things that Hynek did during his life, or some of the cases he investigated, you could do that, and it'd be more interesting than, like I say, these hack writers.
Wow. So
and I talked to some of them, and I told them, I said, "What are you doing?" "Well, you got to understand, it's entertainment." I said, "No, you're purporting. You started out saying this is what happened with Dr. Hynek." I said, "No, he didn't even, half the cases they have him investigating, he didn't even touch."
Wow.
But he did all kinds of things that were really interesting, and like I said, he almost got killed in South America. Now that seems to be something you could make a show out of. And you could just tell the truth, and it's fantastic enough like that. But no,
so
we've got to say our honorable people like the Lieutenant Gorman in one of the first episodes, a case that Hynek did not investigate. He didn't investigate that. He didn't go out there and talk to Gorman. They got Gorman going crazy,
that's what you're saying.
and holding his wife hostage. Give me a break.
Oh my,
no.
It's
terrible. It's terrible.
So people, okay, so let's look at
so
that.
So then how are you, if that's the kind of stuff that's presented as what we do, or what's happened, how do you get people to take this thing seriously? Especially academics.
Okay.
You can't. They're going to say, they're going to look at one of those episodes and say, "This is so silly. I don't want to be associated with it."
Great. So here we are, historical documentation. So the History Channel is supposed to be doing history, but they're doing It looks like
they're doing entertainment
but
now.
It's not. It's
they interviewed.
Entertainment.
They interviewed
reality shows.
Right. Well, it's not even that. It's not even that good. And like I said, Hynek's son is involved in that, and he wasn't when Hynek was alive. His children were not interested in what he was doing. So I'm sure he's getting some kind of consulting fee for this thing. They sent me a thing and said, would you come on at the end and talk about these cases? I said, no, I won't. Because I'm validating what you do. So I'm not going to do that. I said, if you just take some time to look at the case, you can dramatize this so it's as interesting as anything you can make up in your mind.
Okay,
if you
so
really
here we
look
go.
at some of these cases.
It's how people are spending the money and they're rewriting history, but not properly, and that's not fair to us
Right.
or our children. And
now, I
60
saw a
to 80
History Channel thing back about 10 years ago, and it had one of the Robert Billick, who was sort of the unofficial historian out at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base at the ATIC there. He goes all the way back to when it was T2. So during the war, he was there. And like I said, he's sort of the unofficial historian. And just by seeing that thing, I learned a lot, because it was actually done as a history documentary about what happened out there as intelligence at Wright-Patterson. It was not a UFO documentary. It was just a documentary about how they did things day to day, and some of the things they were involved in. It was very interesting. And one of the people that we interviewed for our oral history program was Billick. So I got to check what the History Channel said about him against what he had told us in his oral history. It was very good. But now they've become a bunch of hack writers. So they're just real pain in the neck now.
Well, we've got
ancient aliens and all this other stuff. Secret files, and I don't know, half a dozen of them on there now. They're just half of them are don't have any basis in reality. They are there's people sitting around and writing second-rate science fiction. And that's not what I did. Now, I went on the Smithsonian. Smithsonian had a multi-part UFO program about UFOs, and I went on with the Smithsonian, and I talked about the 1952 August UFO sighting at Kirkland Air Force Base, New Mexico, when one of the pilots actually shot at a UFO. So it's in Ruppelt's book. It's one of his first chapters in there, and he talks about it. And so I went beyond what he said about it and researched it further. And we found, Tom and I found the intelligence officer that was present at the time, and we interviewed him. So now we know a little bit more about this. Now, Ruppelt discussed this at the Robertson panel at the CIA. Well, everybody thinks that there's nothing about the Robertson panel except whatever Frederick Durant wrote about it, and that's not true. One of the scientists actually made notes of what went on at the panel. Dr. Thornton Page kept notes, and Ruppelt told about the Kirkland Air Force Base thing, so this is another source of information about it. And so when the Smithsonian people started interviewing me on this, they just wanted me to read back to them give back to him what Ruppelt said. And I said, no, this is wrong. Ruppelt's got it wrong here. So how do you know? And I said, because we talked to the intelligence officer. We know what the heck was going on there. He was able to give us insight into what was happening at this sighting. So what Ruppelt wrote in his book, it's not exactly the way things happened. And I said, then we've got the notes from the scientist. And they were surprised because they being the Smithsonian, of course, they're anti-UFO anyways. They were surprised. They said, how did you get this stuff? And I said, by research, a lot of research. We had to find the people that were involved, and luckily we were able to find the name, and then we looked throughout the country for this guy's name and called him up and asked him if he would interview with us, and he did. So that's how usually when we interview somebody, we don't just interview them about their intersection with UFOs. We interview them about their whole life. So it's usually about a 2-hour thing, maybe it's longer, where we talk to them, their childhood, their military service, anything else they did, their education, the whole person, and then we spend maybe the second half or more on how they were involved with UFOs. This is the way we do things. It's not professional. We're not doing it we're trying to do as close as we can to the standard that the Oral History Association has put out.
Well, there you
but
go.
we don't have the time to go back and check everybody's what they tell you, or submit to them a copy of the interview so that they can make corrections or additions. It's just we have most of us have regular jobs, and we're trying to do this on the side. So it's I would argue that it's not hobbyist, but it's not. We don't have the resources that, say, a university like Texas A&M would have.
Well, do you pay dues to Oral History Association yourself?
Huh?
Do you pay dues to the Oral History Association?
No, Tom does. He drags me along because I know the UFO history.
Ah, I see.
So he does. He's got the equipment. He knows how to produce archives quality films, and how to, what to ask. Now, I think he is a member of the Oral History Association. Right. But they do have they have a guide as to how oral histories are supposed to be done.
Well,
we try to stay as close as we can to them, but look, we went on one trip where I think we put at least, going around from one place to another, I think we must have put 5 to 6,000 miles traveling to go places.
Wow.
So we're and that's like doing an oral history every 2 days. In the meantime, you're traveling and everything. So it's we try to be as close to the standards that they have, but unfortunately, we don't have the resources.
Well, they
to meet
have
the
$35 a year is what the community practitioner. Now, general member is $100 a year. We can't charge that much, you and I. So, what do you want? Since you know OHA, you're going with Tom, but for what do you want to charge right now? Because just to give people a directory listing, and we'll look at yours, but we got $1, $2, and $5 a month for our radio club. What do you think about for our UFO Association club? But you'll have to help me list who's a practitioner. But today we're working for the students in the community, and we do this free. But we're going to try to train people how to organize, like whatever club or website they want to join. We can't decide for them. We're more of a management content group right now with oral history. Wow. Well, anyway, we can talk about that off air later, I guess, but it won't be much, folks.
I'm interested in canals.
Canals?
Canals, the history of canals in the United States.
Wow, so, like the Erie Canal.
Yeah, the Erie Canal. So,
wow.
So you could take trips on the Erie Canal, but
nice.
But it's limited. You got to get a early reservation, and you got to do, I'll tell you what, the people that do the trip, they don't advertise very much. It must be mostly word of mouth or something like that. Or there used to be a canal here in Connecticut called the Farmington Canal, and it's now historical. There's not much of it left. It's just all ruins. But I went on a trip with people that I guess you'd say they're archaeologists. And you can find out where the canal was and the route it took and everything. And there's still artifacts. There's no canal there anymore, but there's still artifacts. So that's one of the things. Of course, there's all in Europe. You can take you can ride on the rivers all the way from the Netherlands to the Black Sea, because they have canals between the Rhine and the Danube and a number of these other rivers that you can go on. So that that's another interest I have. Now, if I was to go ahead and do a film of that or a documentary, it wouldn't be professional. I'm not a professional videographer or anything like that. So it's the same thing with ufology. We're trying to do a number of things. I mean, oral history is just one thing. And putting together documents in some kind of order and reports and things like that, it's we're a lot of people, they're kind of out of their depth. We got to learn by doing.
Right. That's what we're trying to start this internship for. Apprentice and
internship. This is
like
not an approved subject for study. Many people in academia do not believe that we're serious or anything. And of course they get feedback from the outside. You talk about these conferences. The first thing we go to these conferences, what do you see? A statue of a gray. And so if you and I saw this at one of the MUFON conferences I went to. The local radio TV station came down to film some stuff about that. Now they're having a meeting on science in the other room about how to possibly set up a series of cameras to catch UFOs, and they're talking in the other room. But this guy, he saw that statue of the Gray, and he spent 20 minutes photographing it from going from all different angles. The seriousness is gone. Nothing is, he didn't look at anything else there. And it's only a minute or so on evening news, so, that's all he has to do. So he didn't talk about what was going on there. He was talking about this statue he saw. Billy Cox was talking about in one of his columns. In which he went to a UFO conference, and what do they have? They have this dog that looks like it's being, this costume on this dog that looks like it's being eaten by an alien. Oh, that's really serious. People that don't know what anything about ufology think, oh, these guys are really nuts. Well, if you act like you're a nut, that's what people are going to say about you. You are a nut. So, I noticed that most of these conferences, they don't have anything to pass out to somebody that, might want to know, might just wander in on what's going on and be interested in finding out more about it. That seems to be a problem. There's a big problem here, I think, about do we want to be serious or do we want this to be a joke?
Well, what do you have any? We've got your website and your project, but you're not being paid by Smithsonian. So let's look at how we come together weekly on a radio show, and if we bring people on, some of them may be getting money from the Smithsonian and some don't. But as Ace Folklife Society, I started that based on my commitment to collecting stories in Kentucky up in the hills and working with International Bluegrass Music Association and Broadcast Music Incorporated, BMI, but I'm also a member of the Society of Professional Journalists. But I'm not a member of anything for an investigator anymore because that was my trade. But we can do ACO Press Club, but we're oral historians here. How do we want to present ACO Association? Do you want it to be a better practice, or do we want to have you and me the principles and use the, other practices? Because Ace Folklife Society, and then we have the Ascension Center organization for our spiritual science community. That's a whole topic in itself. But the UFO business, Janet's been taking more. Remember, Dr. Bruce Maccabee helped us set up the ACO for Alien Contact Org for the contactees. But at the same time, they had what was his name? Edgar Mitchell doing his group and the Psi stuff, and then Free came in, and then that guy Ray Hernandez took over Free. Janet and I were in that beginning. I've helped start a lot of organizations. In the beginning, in Florida, Dr. Edgar Mitchell and stuff, but they're all separate, and they all get their own little clique and their own little committees. MUFON's got a board of directors, but you and I, we have to decide how we want to do all this. To answer your own question, you are the principal because Dr. Bruce Maccabee is still with us and always will be. He and Jan, an honorarium like Stan. But right now, everybody's dying, so we got to reestablish all this, because I work with videographers too, and then we have book authors, vendors. So in preparation for interviewing and preservation, we need access to oral records, which we're doing here, and then where we're going to keep the oral archives. So all this needs to go into, I guess, one club, and then decide on the divisions like a library, because we don't have a brick and mortar. You and I have discussed that for all our archives. We need one. But even CUFOS has so many by themselves. They need their own building. That's just one group. And this is a whole new group of people. Basically, you're already talking to people. I don't know if you're qualifying or disqualifying them, whether they'd want to be in our group. All we could do is ask. But how would we do skeptics? You know what I'm saying? If they hear this guy approaches you and says, I need your help, I'm writing this book, I need the information, and I'm going to get paid by Smithsonian because I got a grant. But you're helping them with information, which I'm sure you don't mind. But, you used to get money yourself. Like, look at Bigelow and MUFON and what is that group you're in? They used to pay you, but they don't anymore. What was that group? UFO groups. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I got grants. Nobody ever paid me.
Oh, a grant. Okay,
yeah, but I mean, the Smithsonian gave me, $300, and that was mostly expenses and stuff.
Okay, so you turn in.
I told them. I said, look, that's usually what I tell people. I said, look, I don't want to come on a radio or television program with you, because what it's going to be, you're going to get a skeptic, and then you're going to get a believer. And I said, I'm not a believer. And I said, if you don't need a skeptic, I'm skeptical myself. But this is the only way you guys know how to do this kind of a program. You get one guy to talk about his side, and then you get somebody else that is completely opposite to talk about his side. I said, I don't want to play cowboys and Indians. I'm way beyond that. That's 6 years old. I said, if you want to hear about what I've done in my research, that's fine. I said, I am very skeptical when I do things. I don't accept everything. I check it over and over and over again. So I said, I don't need, and especially somebody that's a degreed astronomer that comes on afterwards and brags about, well, I never investigate any UFO cases, but I could just tell you that this is wrong. Well, if you just never investigate anything, then you don't know. And I'm tired of that. So usually I tell them, hey, if I'm going to be on your program, it's $30 an hour and minimum of 10 hours, and that usually everybody's gone. They don't want to. They don't want to talk to me then, because they want to. They want to get somebody that comes on for free. So the Smithsonian actually, say, yeah, we'll pay that. Which is nothing. If Stan Freeman came on a TV show, he got automatically $2,000. Wow.
Yeah, that was sort of set standard.
Yeah, that's the standard, because he was AFTA or whatever the organization is that are TV personalities.
Right.
And so he has to get paid at scale, whatever it is now. I think when he first started, it was $2,000. I don't know what it is now.
Yeah, SAG-AFTRA. We just had the SAG-AFTRA
SAG-AFTRA or whatever it is. Yeah, I'm not sure what the organization. He was in
that's more Hollywood film industry.
So if he appeared on one of these programs, he got scale, whatever it's like the minimum wage for actors.
Right. Well, he helped me start this, and then I put in my book, he and I were doing books, but he had a New York agent, but I was talking to him when he was getting stuff going, years and years ago, which and J. Allen Hynek, but we're old timers now. And what do we want to do based on our history with the kids coming up today that want to do oral history on radio, and they don't care of the content, they just want to get into radio. But you didn't come to help me to do radio. I came to help you with the J. Allen Hynek and the CUFO stuff, because I sort of committed to J. Allen Hynek. But you committed, well, you and Barry Greenwood committed to help CUFO's the new director, right? Whoever, I don't even know who the new director is. I apologize. I keep forgetting his name.
Mark Rodiger.
Okay, but you still like helping him, right?
Right. So.
And I have yet to talk to him. I know you and I were going to have him on a radio show, but we'll plan one in the future once we get our act together here. I'm just going to use OHA for you and me right now. I'll put that on this website. General membership $100, emergency independent $75, student $35, life member $1,000, and partner member $450. I'll let you know if anybody joins. But I'll put it on today's show. That'll give us OHA model for starting something.
So actually, I mean, you don't need much equipment to have a podcast or something. And that's how a lot of people start out, with a podcast.
Okay.
And so you don't need much, you know, and in a lot of cases, they are paying to use professional equipment, and they may even provide an engineer to run the equipment, you know, to get the. And if you do other things like various things up from podcasts, where you're actually doing documentary films and things like that, a lot of people just, you know, they just start out doing this. So, I mean, not everybody's a television reporter or anything. And like you say, people don't, you know, they might like to, they just want content that people might be interested in. So you like, here I live in near Willimantic, Connecticut, and years ago they had frog armies.
What?
During the Revolutionary War. So somebody could come on, some local historian or a local person that collects legends and things, and they can talk about the frog fight at Willimantic. So if you go around the towns around Willimantic, you will find everywhere there's frogs. There's a bridge in Willimantic over the river there that's got frogs sitting at the big statues, about 10 foot tall, of frogs at the bottom of the bridge. They call it the Frog Bridge.
Why do they call them frog wars, though? I mean,
it was
really
a frog war. For some reason, these there were frogs in this one pond, and these other frogs came, and it was a big battle between them. And it was I mean, the people were so amazed. They made drawings and wrote up things about what they saw and everything. And so everything around here has something to do with frogs. I went to a restaurant where I used to go to a restaurant when I was in the post office, when I was at when I used to get loaned out to another post office, and coming back I used to eat at a restaurant that was called Rivet. You know, like the frogs make that name, that noise. So, and you know, there's all frogs all over the place, and in the window and everything, there's a stained glass frog. So, I mean, that is something, you know, content that you know, somebody that's doing such a program would be interested in doing that, even though they're not particularly interested in the subject. It's just an unusual thing.
Wow. I had no idea. So that's really, is that American history?
Yeah, it is.
That would be a documentary.
There was some kind of a battle between the frogs. I don't know. One group of frogs was trying to get this other group of frogs out of the pond. They were trying to take over. So.
Wow! How about that? Predatory. It is.
Yeah. They said they're marching across They didn't have paved roads, but they had, wagon trails, and people. Here comes these frogs from another place, attacking these first frogs.
I've never heard of anything.
It's called the Frog War.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
that is awesome.
So and all over Willimantic, everything's a frog. Everything's about frogs. It's a legend.
Live?
It's a legend that's grown up. They got the Frog Bridge and Frog Restaurant and all kinds of things like that.
Wow! So you live there?
That's a local legend that people around the country might be interested in hearing about.
Wow. Well, our little thing today we started, I guess it'll just be, we'll have principles and we'll figure out how to let people in. But you've got this closed-minded stuff, but do you have a frog member association up there where people can join?
What's that,
Are you a member of it? You remember our Frog Wars?
Oh no! It's just it's such a legend. If they ever, like I say, if they, in fact, one of the streets up here is named Frog Hollow. So.
That's so funny.
Yeah,
but do people come and pet frogs? Do they have? I don't even know about frogs. I'm not a frog person. Big bullfrogs, little frogs. Now I like those little tiny green ones, little tiny tree frogs. I played with those growing up. I didn't like those big brown ones in Monroe, Louisiana, where I grew up. They were ugly. They looked like they had warts on them. I don't even know the difference.
Yeah, so they you can still go where the pond that this all happened on. I mean, there's a sign on the road saying Frog War.
Wow.
This way. So
Frog War this way.
Yeah,
Amazing.
and the library's got all kinds of information about it. And,
well, we can meet at the library. That's where our
in the wintertime like it is now. Now, like they have these 10-foot frogs on the bridge, like at the bottom of the bridge, like guarding the bridge.
Wow.
They got these statues of 10-foot frogs there, and in the wintertime, people knit scarves for them and put the scarves around their neck so they don't get cold.
Wouldn't they be hobby association frogs? They wouldn't be professional frog association, would they?
No, but I mean, the local historical society, would do that. Now, my sister goes to a history meeting every, I think it's twice a month on Fridays, and during the Revolutionary War, the French went to Rhode Island, and when Washington saw that what was going on in the South towards the end of the war, Cornwallis was the British general, and he figured he could pen Cornwallis in, and so General Rochambeau, who was the French general, he had an army here, and they started marching down from Rhode Island through Connecticut, and he went through right where I'm sitting. He went here in Canterbury, Connecticut. He went right through this town, and there's all kinds of things on the roads that talk about, Rochambeau stopped here, and people find buttons, with these coin detectors, the metal detectors. They find French buttons from French uniforms and other things. And he marched down there and joined Washington. And this is a funny story from that. He this Connecticut sergeant was at the battle, and so the watchword was Rochambeau. And he wrote back and he said, but a lot of the colonial soldiers or the patriots didn't know who Rochambeau was, and they thought they were saying "Rush on, boys" when they attacked. So it's the kind of stuff you're interested. Is interesting. You could actually make a program around that.
You
about
could.
how they, everybody thinks that since Washington started out, the beginning of the war, he was on Long Island and he got beat by the British. I mean, all he had was people that they weren't soldiers. They were just militias and stuff. And the British were professional soldiers. They've been doing that all their lives. So they beat him. And everybody says, oh, Washington lost that battle. He wasn't that good until the French got here and told him how to. No. He pulled out of Long Island and through New York and finally to Valley Forge. It was a brilliant campaign. He saved most of his army. And people don't realize how, he was being beaten back every place, but he managed to save his army, which was the big thing. And then when we came back, Alexander Hamilton and everything, when they crossed the Delaware, they had a little surprise for the British and the Germans. So that's things like that that's just one content that you could have, and there's other things. How do you make maple syrup? That might be a program, or so there.
We've got Ace Folklife programs, but I don't know if that's Folklife. Maybe is Frogs Folklife history?
I guess it's a legend. I mean, I'm sure that, there's a lot of embellishment to the Frog War. I'm quite sure. It's more like a legend than actual history. I mean, there is some actual history to it, but, it's more like that. The post office down there in where I worked, it goes back to 1867. The building goes back to 1867. The post office moved around down there, but ended up in a building that was built in 1867. And next to it is an inn, and it used to be on the stagecoach run. So the stagecoach used to stop at the inn, and people could get out. And they had, even in those days, they had umbrellas at the, and they had a little outdoor thing where, in the summertime, people could sit outdoors and get a drink and, take a rest during the stagecoach run. And then during the Civil War, or after the Civil War, it became a sanatorium for the some of the wounded soldiers, and so there's all kinds of interesting things you can talk about like that, just anything. And that's what a lot of people do on these, podcasts and other things. They're just looking for content. They're not interested in the subject per se, like you said.
Right. So we've got this one we've started as an oral history group, but it's mainly about UFOs. But you're a historian, and like you said, you're interested in canals. So we could do a weekly show besides this one, but we don't want to give up on the UFO history.
Yeah.
So
I'm interested in railroads too. It's just I don't do much with that stuff now because I am, like I say, I'm getting towards the end, and I want to finish off scanning this stuff and arranging things so somebody else could take over.
What do you think?
When I leave, so it's
the Allied Command Organization Oral History. It can be everything, can it? Or do you think it should be military only?
I don't know. It's there's so many things about the military that are people don't know about. People don't, they just...
Well, military history is one subject, like we write books, all right?
Yeah.
And it's not like, we can't supply the whole library, but we can tell them we're historians, and we specialize in paranormal or UFO really falls. But, it depends on how the larger... You think about it, History Channel covers UFOs, but now Travel Channel is doing UFO stories. Travel Channel. So
Richard Hall used to write about women in the Army. So there were some women during the Revolutionary War that dressed up like men and were in battles in the Revolutionary War. There was more than in the Civil War. There were a number of women that were actually, in the armies, both North. Well, I don't know about South, but I do know the North had. That's how Richard Hall got interested in. He did a biography of this one woman who was a soldier in the Civil War, and she hid it. She was able to hide herself from most of the men. They had no idea.
Yeah, I've been known to do that.
Yeah, so
couldn't tell me from a man.
And she wanted to fight, and that's what she did. And Hall wrote that book, and then he started finding out that there were other women that were like that, and then it even went back to the Revolutionary War, where women had been in the army as soldiers. So that's he wrote a couple of books on I can't remember the titles of it. This one is about, I think the title is something about deception or something. Anyways, I think there was about a dozen of them that he had researched. And the one about the woman in the Civil War, it was quite successful, as a matter of fact. It sold a lot of copies. And so he went on a lot of programs just to talk about women disguising themselves so they could join the army.
Well, can we put Space Travel Advocates? That's an interesting social media group. I don't know how many are in it. I put you in it, but you're about, I hope you're in it because you got the UFO things are blending over. I've got the UFO Secret Space Group, Allied Command, Military History, Alien Contact Orators History. That's the one with Bruce Maccabee, you know, the ACO that we're doing. But I guess we'll just have a general membership if anybody wants to join, and then we'll put them on the radio. You know, we'll give them a show.
Right.
We can give them an hour show as part of the benefits or something. I don't know. But you're only committed to 2 hours a week but you let me know if it grows or we start having people come in and want to do more, I'll let you know.
Right.
So, now, are you in the, I think I've got, you don't care because you're listed as ACO main director, history kind of person, as a historian, but do you want me to put you, the UFO Association, you want to be in that one separate, don't you? The UFO Association, because somebody else asked me to write an article about it, the UFO Association, while we were on the radio show. They want to go read about it because I have it down right now because I'm putting up a directory for it. But ACO Club app, I'll put that on this show so at least you can find. But it's mostly people wanting the social media, but they don't like to pay for that. They want to be in the free groups and social media, right? But the professionals...
Sure, that's what's killing all these groups and everything, because they can't get any money.
Exactly.
Everything's got to be for free.
Well, you know who's making the money off of it?
Then you can't run anything.
Right.
Yeah, so it's that's what happened to all the UFO groups. They used to be all over the place, but everybody wants it for free. They want free information. So all these little UFO journals all over the place, they went out of business.
Right. Well, they got you and me right now, and Stan's gone. George Filer's got his nice archives out there, but he's always been a writer for MUFON and the newsletter. It was him and Stan back in 2008, and there was James Carrion, and then Jan Harzan came in. And now it's much more professional with a California office, and Jan Harzan gets paid, and a couple other people get paid, in the office. And then they have all their money for their annual events off of their website domain, what they get for membership, but they got international membership. Did the government really infiltrate that, or is that because Bigelow? Give us a story. Let's get back on the UFO. We got 9 minutes. Give us the story on Bigelow and MUFON, because you were in on that sign, MUFON, and what were the 3 groups that were helping Bigelow? The 3 organizations.
Fund for UFO Research, Center for UFO Studies, and MUFON.
There you go. So that's history right there, folks, right here. UFOs, as usual, Jan Aldrich and Theresa J. Morris, reporters, and we have. Go ahead.
Now Bigelow just said he was gonna provide the money, and the coalition, the 3 groups, were gonna provide how it was spent. But Bigelow is not that kind of a person. He's got to have his finger in it somehow. So he let them do what they wanted to for a while, and then he just said, "Hey, well, I'm not going to give any more money unless you do what I want."
Oh, well, are we going to say that to people? We're not going to give them any more money unless they do what we want them to?
Well, like I said, Bigelow didn't like my project at all.
Okay. Why?
So he was not. And Richard Hall did the 2nd volume of the UFO evidence from 1964 to 1995, I think it was.
Well, do you know? Do you know Dr. Bruce? Not Bruce Maccabee, the other Bruce. He's been at UFO stuff. He's in our club, ACO club. What's his name? Dr. Bruce. Oh, do you know the one? He just did a book.
Cornett.
He's in. Yes. How'd you know that?
I said I've been around for 50 years in UFOs, so I know a lot of things. May not know it right away now, the way my brain's working, but it's it's there.
Well, he's in our club, and he's shown up and been professional as far as radio. That's the only way I know him is radio. But he really liked Dr. Bruce Maccabee, and I have a picture with him shaking hands and all of that. But now each person can do their own archives, but apparently he's got some of his own. But he mainly studied that New Jersey up there, Montauk, I believe. But that's what his book's about. He just wrote a book about whatever he did on that. But anyway, he's going to be a speaker for Bob Brown. He's paying him to come over there. Where is that? They call it the Other Las Vegas, Laughlin. It's where Paula Harris does her Star Works. Or she's doing something now with Russell Targ and ESP. Oh, that's another factor. I like psychology and parapsychology. I can't help it. That was always just something I was interested in after I died. And I kept dying, and I wanted to know why, and I kept coming back. So that's not UFOs, but that's, neuroscience. But in parapsychology, the Russians were interested in psi phenomena. So I have phenomenology. But now one of my groups here that I have never had a meeting yet is metaphysics, monthly meeting, but I pay $25 a month for a meetup group. And they do a really good job of marketing. And then we have one in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with Dr. Ken Johnston and a lady. Anyway, there's several people that do. Do you know Richard Smith in Albuquerque? Richard's taken over the Albuquerque UFO business, but I think he does it. He doesn't call it UFO, though. He calls it consciousness, I think. Richard and Linda Smith. Are you familiar with them?
No, I'm afraid I'm not, no.
All right, well, they're event promoter over there, Richard and Linda Smith. They came on this radio show. We've helped start a lot of people since we began in 2012, and Lorian Fenton came on years ago before she had her first festival and event, and she got MUFON up there in Santa Clara, and she has a UFO deal annually, right? And she does a spot, or did, on Revolution Radio. I think she still shows up on Mondays. I have to look, to be honest with you. I filled in for her a couple of times when she didn't show up with a mad painter. So, well, you're doing your part, but you said you're going to stay in UFOs, and the trains and the canals have taken a back seat. Well, in the ACO Club, I can list your interests, just like social media does free. But I don't want to pay for everybody's stuff, but we can pay for just putting your ACO Club links and bios up there, your bio and your face and your links. And then we're going to have oral reports, and I'll put this one, and I can go back and grab your books, oral reports, and put on your page. That'll be an acoclub.app, so write that down, and I'll put under your professional association, ACO Association for Allied Command Org. But I see if there's a place to list. It's a directory, and I'll see if I can list UFO Association as separate. Now, in this club, if they join general membership and they want in both directories, if they pay the general member, we don't care. We can put them. But if they're just paying my Patreon $1 or $2 a month, they just get their name and their link to help run this company or this community or whatever they call it these days in social media. I don't know with all the free ones. Let me see who this is. This may be Tommy. Let me see. Somebody called in at the last minute. Is that you, Tommy? Hello? Somebody just tuned in, but I can't hear them. That may be Tommy. But you're live and on the air, whoever you are.
Hi, it's me, Ronnie.
Who?
It's me, Ronnie. Can you hear me?
Oh, Ronnie Dawson?
How y'all doing? Hey, this is Ronnie Dawson down in Texas. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're in our club, right?
Yeah, how are you doing?
Oh, okay. Lonnie, this is
Right.
Jan. Jan
Yeah,
is
I heard
the
you guys
original.
were talking about UFOs.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, Lonnie Dawson registered under Patreon, Jan, and he has a page on ACO, and he can help us decide too, Jan, at all the whether we put them both in UFO or. But Lonnie, you're new at history, right? You're in the with Dr. Bruce in Texas branch, right?
I guess I'm not really sure. I joined this thing, so.
All right. Well, this
I
is
think
Jan
I am with
Aldrich.
Dr. Bruce, I believe.
Jan, this is it Lonnie or Ronnie? Ronnie, isn't it?
Yeah, Ronnie with the R.
Okay,
Right.
Ronnie, this is Jan. He's our original director, like Dr. Bruce Maccabee used to be, and then we got your friend you've met. Now, Jan, Ronnie met Dr. Bruce. We were just talking about in El Paso at a UAP meeting they have there. Okay, and he's agreed to help us. He's a truck driver, but he's been to a couple events. He's been to Roswell. So Ronnie, I guess would like to have an annual event so you two can meet, and we'll talk about that more next week. But Ronnie, we'll do another show this week, but we do Fridays. Can you make Friday or not?
I work during the day, so it would be late in the afternoon, yeah.
Oh, okay. So
it would
you
have to be late in the afternoon.
It was 7 to 9 is Central, and you're on Mountain, aren't you? Mountain time? El Paso is Mountain, right? Well, we'll work it out. Jan, you can't do nights, can you?
Yeah.
You have to do that. I think, Jan,
No,
you have to do
I'm Central.
days, don't you? Oh, you're on
no.
Central?
No, I don't. It doesn't matter.
Okay, well, let's meet Friday 7 to 9. And can you make it Friday, Ronnie? We'll continue this, folks.
I think I can.
You want me to try to get in touch with you Friday or Saturday, Ronnie? I'm having trouble hearing you.
Yeah, maybe it's like when we first tried to.
Yes, I believe I can.
Yeah, get started.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Okay, well, Jan, Ronnie, just call me or email me, and we'll record right here with Jan. But let's try to get Friday nights go. Is Friday or Saturday better for you, Jan? We got some.
Friday.
Okay, let's keep with. Is 7 to 9 okay, Jan, for an evening? That's 8 to 10.
But whose time zone?
It'd be 8 to 10 yours. 8 to 10 Eastern.
8 to 10
Friday.
Eastern. Okay. Yeah.
You'll be competing Friday with Richard Dolan. I think he does Friday 8 to 10.
I don't mind that.
Richard don't care. All right, Ronnie, we'll get you going Friday with Jan, and then we'll talk UFOs then, okay?
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
See you then.
Okay, Jan. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back
Good night.
Friday night with Ronnie Dawson and Jan Aldrich for our ACO club, but we're branching off and having some UFO talk too. And now we've got the intern group. So we're getting it all together, folks, and we'll help each other. All right, Jan, we'll see you Friday, and then we'll be back here, folks, Tuesday for the day show, 3 to 5, Friday 7 to 9. All right, Jan,
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. We'll get it going, folks. It'll just take
Here
us
at
a while.
ACO Radio, American
All right.
Communications Online, or
Thank
any
you.
affiliated stations, or websites are not responsible for what guest hosts or call-ins may say. All programming is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only.